Hello Matrix and welcome to Waza Matrix. My name is Luni and I'll be assisting you to get all of your questions and comments through to us. Today we're assisting you with your Economics Paper 1 exam guide. All you need to do is hit us up on all of our social media platforms, search for Waza Matrix as well as our WhatsApp line. The details will be on the screen. As always guys, we've got a cool competition going on for you, so please stay tuned and I'll give you all of those details later on in the show. I'm not alone. With me are my favorite sign language interpreter, Nicolene, as well as our awesome teacher, Tando. Thank you so much, guys, and over to you.
Thanks, Luni. Hi, boys and girls. As Luni has already said, I'm Tando, and I'm here to assist you guys with your exam guide to your final exam. We've already written our prep exams, and as we stand today, the countdown has begun to your final exams. So I'm here to prep you guys and to help you guys prepare for your final exams. Right, I'm going to be taking you guys through your paper 1. Right, you guys are all aware that our paper 1 paper, it's a 2-hour paper with 150 marks. Right, what is examinable in paper 1? We have got our macroeconomics and we also have our economic pursuits. Right, so those are the 2 modules that are examinable in paper 1. Right, so paper 1, macroeconomics, is the following topics. We have got secular flow, we have got business cycles, we have got public sector, we have got foreign exchange markets, and then we've got protectionism and free trade. Right, and then our economic pursuits has got economic growth and development, has got industrial development, then we have got social and economic indicators. There are 3 sections in this paper. We've got section A, that is question 1, section B, that is question 2, right through to 4. Then we've got section C, that has got question 5 to 6. Let's look at our section A, boys and girls, which is our question 1 in the exam. Right, question 1 in the exam is compulsory. All topics are included in this section of the paper, and it's got 30 marks, and you have to spend a maximum of 20 minutes in this section. Right, then we've got our question 1.1, which is our multiple choice question in the part of the paper. Right, there are 4 options that are available for you. Option A, option B, and option C and D. Right, there is 1 option that answers the paper, so you have to choose either option A or option B or option C or option D. Do not choose more than 1 option like some learners are fond of doing, where you write either option A/B or you write A and B. Only 1 option there answers the question. So again, I encourage you, boys and girls, to answer all questions. There are 8 questions in this part of the paper. Answer question 1.1.1 right through to question 1.1.8. Then we move on to the second section of the paper, which is our matching items. Here, boys and girls, you are given 2 columns. You've got column A, and then you've got column B. Right, your column A gives you the terms. Your column B is the description to the terms. Right, I would encourage you boys to first read column B, and then you go look for the answer in column A. Like, what do you do in the exam? You would write your question numbering, right? So it becomes question 1.2.1, 1.2.2, 1.2.3. You go to your question paper, you read column A, you look for the description in column B, you look for the answer in column A. Right, for example, let's say your answer for A, they would say maybe, they will define gross domestic product, and they say the total output of all final goods and services that are produced within the country. And then you would find that gross domestic product has been included under B. So you are going to come and write here 1.22B. Instead of you guys reading column A, which gives you the term, and then looking for the answer in the descriptions. A lot of the learners, you guys find it difficult to read the term and then to look for the description in the B column there. Right, we move on to question 1.3. Question 1.3 is our give a term or a description. Here, learners, you are tested on your knowledge of terms, right? Do not use abbreviations or acronyms in any section or in any part of this section, right? You have to answer or you have to attempt the question in full. You cannot write GDP, you cannot write GDI, you cannot write any acronyms. You are supposed to write gross domestic product, you are supposed to write gross domestic income to be able to earn full marks for this section. Right, for example, you are given the value of all final goods and services that are produced within the borders of a country for a specific period. Right, here the answer is gross domestic product. Like I've already alluded to you guys, do not write GDP. If you guys write GDP, you do not earn marks. An acronym or an abbreviation does not earn you marks for purposes of question 1.3. That was our question 1. That was our section A. Now we are moving on to section B of the question paper. Right, I need to state to you, boys and girls, that section B gives you an option of 3 questions. Right, from those 3 questions, you have to attempt 2. So you need to be careful there. Do not write all 3 questions, because if you write all 3 questions, the last one is not going to be marked. The marker is simply going to scratch out the last question. You do not earn marks for that. So be careful. Make your choice of the 2 questions. You can either choose question 2 and question 3, or you can choose question 2 and question 4. Now, let's look at how they approach section B. Right. So there are short questions, and it's got 40 marks, and your time limit is 30 minutes there. Right. So how are the questions structured? Your question 2 is your macroeconomics. Question 2 is macroeconomics. Your question 3 is economic pursuits. And then your question 4 is a combination of macroeconomics and also economic pursuits. So choose your questions wisely there. If you are a learner who is strong in macroeconomics, so you are strong in your circular flow, in your public sector, in your business cycles, I would encourage you guys to choose question 2 and also to choose question 4. If you are a learner who's strong in your economic pursuits, then I would encourage you guys to choose question 3 and also question 4. However, it's not compulsory, it's not mandated that you choose question 2 and question 4 or question 3 and question 4. You can do what you are comfortable with. If you're an all-rounder learner who's good in all the 2 modules, then you can attempt whatever questions are easy for you. Right, for your section C, you have to select one of the 2 questions. Again, like I said in your section B, do not attempt all 2 essays. You have to choose one. If you answer question 5, do not attempt question 6, because only one of the 2 essays are going to be marked, right? The essay is 40 marks, and the time limit is 30 minutes. Right, that's it for now, boys and girls. Let me hand over to Luni.
Thank you, Tando. Guys, we are going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We'll see you straight after this. Welcome back from the break, Matrix. If you've just joined us, we are still doing your exam guide to help you prep for the upcoming exams. Well, this next competition is for anyone who's constantly running out of data or you just want to win yourself something. Woza Matrix is bringing you the hashtag WozaWinner competition, where 2 lucky matriculants stand a chance to win 2 gigs of data. So all you need to do to enter is head on over to our Facebook page and all of the details will be there. Thank you so much, Tando, and over to you.
Thank you once again, Luni. Welcome back, boys and girls. We are continuing with our exam guide. Now we are going to be looking at section B. I will be helping you guys on how to attempt your section B in the exam. Right, we start with our list or name type of questions. These questions are normally question 2.11 and question 3.11 and question 4.11. Right, these questions are lower cognitive level questions. They are normally 2 marks in the exam. There is no explanation that is required for these questions. right? For example, if you are asked to name 2 financial markets in the circular flow, right, what you need to do is to get straight to the answer, and you need to just write, because you are just simply asked to name, right? Your answer would look something like that. Number 1, money market. Number 2, capital market. And then number 3, we have got our foreign exchange market. You can just put a bullet next to your answer to indicate that it's the start of an answer. You don't have to explain in this type of a question. Right? For example, this is another example. We have got name 2 types of economic indicators that are related to price changes. Again, here, you do not need to explain, boys and girls. You simply need to go straight to the answer. Your answer is your PPI and your CPI. Right? Please note, boys and girls, that you can use acronyms, you can use abbreviations for this section of the question paper. So as you are answering your section B and your section C, you are allowed to use acronyms and abbreviations. Like I said earlier on, you cannot use acronyms, you cannot use abbreviations for question 1.3 only. But the rest of the paper, you are fine. Right, then we move on. We look at questions that are mid-cognitive level. These are your how questions, your what questions, your why questions. You need to be guided by the mark allocation, right? E.g., for a 2-mark question, you only require 1 point. If it's a 4-mark question, then again, you need at least minimum of 2 points there. Again, you need to answer the question in the context that it's given. I've got an example that I'm going to tackle with you. The example says, what effect will quotas have on imports? I'll take it again. What effect will quotas have on imports? Here is my solution and how I attempted it. It says, imports become more expensive as there are less goods to import. This is a restriction on imports, right? One thing that I need to point out to you, boys and girls, is you need to answer this type of questions in full sentences. Do not use point form for this type of questions, right? Another example is, what would the effect be on inflation if the increase in labor productivity is lower than the increase in wages? Normally, as I go through this type of questions, I underline the keywords so that I'm able to answer the question appropriately. I'll take the question again. What would the effect be on inflation if the increase in labor productivity is lower than the increase in wages? Right? My answer is inflation will increase because the aggregate demand will be higher than the aggregate supply. I repeat once again, boys and girls, these type of questions, you need to attempt them in full. Do not write points, do not list, do not just state. You need to make sure that your answer is in full. Right? As we continue with our section B, we have again mid-cognitive level questions. We are looking at our question 2.2, our question 3.2, 3.3, 4.2, and 4.3. Right, these ones you are given something in the form of a graph, a cartoon, a table, an extract, real data, or a combination of a graph and an extract. Right, then you are given items or questions in the data response that range from easy to difficult questions. You need to know that questions, or the questions that you are going to get from the data response, they are scaffolded from easy to difficult. Right. This is an example, right? For example, you are given the curve below. We have a curve there. All of you are able, I think, by this time to identify that this is a Laffer curve, right? Let's look at the questions that you can get typically from a diagram like this or from a curve like this. The first question that you can get ideally is, which curve is depicted in the above graph? Please note that normally when you are asked to identify a diagram or to identify a curve, right, it's normally 1 mark at most, right? Again, I encourage you, boys and girls, just merely list. Right, so the answer to that is Laffer curve, and the maximum you can get for that is 1 mark. So you just merely list there. Don't waste time on such questions. Another question typically that you can get is, which tax rate will generate maximum revenue for the government? You go back to the diagram, you look at the diagram, at what tax rate do we get the maximum revenue? Let's check, boys and girls. At a tax rate of 20%, the government is able to generate tax revenue of 100 billion. At a tax rate of 40%, the government is able to generate tax revenue of 130 billion. And then again, when we move to a tax rate of 60%, the government will generate a tax revenue of 100. You see there is a decrease there. So our maximum there is at a tax rate of 40%. Now let's look at the answer. The answer is 40%. Again, typically, you can expect 1 mark for such a question. As you can see, boys and girls, the questions keep on scaffolding. Now you get typically another question like, briefly explain the term progressive tax rate. Now the mark allocation becomes higher because now the level of difficulty is obviously higher than the name and the list type of questions, right? The answer to this would be a progressive tax rate is a tax that levies a lower rate on low income earners than those with a higher income. So basically, what are we saying? We are saying under a progressive tax system, high income earners are taxed more than lower income earners, right? We are still continuing with our scaffolding of questions. What effect will a decrease in the tax rate from 60% to 40% have on tax revenue, right? Let's go back to the graph again. As you can see, boys and girls, that when we decrease our tax revenue from 60 to 40, right? At 60%, we get tax revenue of 100 billion, and then at 40%, we get a tax revenue of 130 billion. So when we reduce our tax from 60% to 40%, our revenue will increase from 100 to 130. So here is the answer there. It says the tax revenue will rise from 100 billion to 130 billion. That is a 30 billion increase. Again, like I said, boys and girls, these are typically full sentence questions. You need to answer the question in full. Right, that's it on those ones. Let's look at the next question. Explain the implication of a tax rate of 60% on the taxpayer. Explain the implication of a tax rate of 60% on the taxpayer. Look at the mark allocation. It's a 4-mark question, meaning to say you need a minimum of 2 points for that one, right? This is not completely taken or extracted from the graph. Now you need to apply your knowledge on tax revenue there, right? The answer there is a tax rate of 60% implies that the taxpayer will only earn 40% of their income of which they work for. Taxpayers might be demotivated to work because more than half, which is 60% of their income, will be going to the state, right? Resulting in tax evasion, where taxpayers might not declare their income to avoid paying excessive amounts of tax. Like I said, these should be answered in full. Answer this type of questions in full, right? Maximum of 2 points there. I gave you guys a 3rd point just in case, but you need to make sure that when a question has got 4 marks, you need a maximum of 2 points there. Right, let's move on. Now we move on to our higher cognitive level questions. These are typically your question 2.4, question 3.4, question 4.4, typically again question 2.5, question 3.5, and also question 4.5. These carry 8 marks in the exam, and they are very important. You need to ensure that you attempt these questions in the exam as they carry the bulk of the marks. An example of such a question that you can typically find in the exam is discuss the multiplier effect on national income for 8 marks. Discuss the multiplier effect on national income. Like I said to you guys earlier on, 8 marks means a minimum of 4 points in your solution there. Right, let's look at the answer. The multiplier relates to how much the national income changes as a result of an injection or a withdrawal. An increase in injections Into the economy, we are looking at our injections, investment, government spending, or exports will lead to a proportionate increase in national income, right? Extra spending would have a knock-on effect and create even more spending. The size of the multiplier depends on the level of leakages. The size of the multiplier is directly proportional to the level of national income created. Like I said, boys and girls, a minimum of 4 points there. And again, you need to show the link between the multiplier and national income there. Typically, again, such questions, you will get questions like differentiate between, compare and contrast, and evaluate question. If it's a differentiate between question, I encourage you, boys and girls, to draw a table, right? When you draw your table, for example, if the question says compare and contrast or differentiate between exogenous and endogenous explanations, you come here, you write endogenous, and then you also write exogenous there. Then you explain your points in full. Endogenous is also known as Keynesians, right? Exogenous is also known as monetarists. You are explaining. For every point that you explain, you get your 2 full marks there. And then when in doubt, if you are not sure of what else to explain in question 2.4, then give examples of what endogenous explanations are and of what exogenous explanations are.
Thank you, Tando. Matrix, we are going to take a quick break, but before we do, don't forget to send us your questions and your comments on all our social media platforms and let us know how we can help you guys. We'll see you straight after the break. We're back from the break, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to enter the competition so that you can stand yourself a chance to win 2 gigs of data. Thank you so much, Tando, and over to you.
Thanks, Luni. We are continuing, boys and girls, with our exam guide. We are now going to move straight into looking at our section C, which is our essay. Like I said earlier on, section C has got 2 questions, question 5 and question 6. You are required to attempt only 1 question in this section. Right. Essay type questions should be 2-folded, with the main part, which has 26 marks, and the additional part that has 10 marks, as outlined in the table on the next slide. Now let's go to the next slide. Let me explain. So our essay contains an introduction, a main part, and an additional part, and a conclusion. Now let's look at our introduction and what it involves. The introduction carries 2 marks in the exam, and the 2 marks are, right, a good introduction is a good starting point. It would need to define a concept or a keyword or that appears in the question there. So you need to define a concept or a keyword that appears in the question. For example, if you are given maybe an essay on markets, you can define what is a market. A market is a mechanism where buyers and sellers meet to exchange goods and services. That would be a good 2 marks in your introduction. So you have defined a key concept there, which is a market. Again, include other sentences to support your topic. Do not include in your introduction any part of the question, so you are not allowed to repeat any part of the question in your answer in the introduction there, right? Again, you need to be careful, boys and girls, that you do not repeat any part of the introduction in the main body. So if you have already tackled something in the introduction, you are not going to earn marks if you repeat it again in the main body. Right, avoid saying in the introduction what you are going to discuss in the main body. Like I said to you, boys and girls, a good part or a good introduction is to define. Define a term, define a word there in your essay question. That normally carries the 2 marks that you need for that part of the essay question. Then we move on, we look at the main part. Like I said to you guys, this is typically asked as discuss in detail or in depth or examine or critically discuss or analyze, compare, evaluate, distinguish, differentiate, explain, assess, debate. This carries 26 marks in the exam, right? And you need to make sure that you write in point form and you also write full sentences. A lot of the learners make the mistake of writing point form and writing in points and not expanding their sentences. Make sure that you write in point form, but you expand full sentences there. Right, and then we move on. We've got the additional part there, which normally carries words like give your opinion, critically discuss, evaluate, critically evaluate, calculate, deduce, compare, analyze, distinguish, interpret, briefly debate, how, suggest. This one carries 10 marks, and it's normally linked to the additional part, but the question is a separate question and should be treated as such. Learners make the mistake of mixing and answering the main body and the additional part as one questions. Please separate them, and you can even write additional part and underline. Then you need to show that you are now tackling the additional part of the essay. Don't attempt them as one question. Now we move on to the conclusion part of the essay. This is a higher order conclusion that should include a brief summary of what you've already discussed in the essay without necessarily repeating facts already mentioned. Right here, we need an opinion or a value judgment on the facts that you've already discussed. A good point, boys and girls, would be additional support information to strengthen the discussion or the analysis that you have made in the essay. Right? A contradictionary viewpoint with motivation if it is required, especially for evaluate kind of questions in the essay where you were required to evaluate. Remember, an evaluate question requires you to give arguments for and arguments against. So in the conclusion there, you can make a contradictory viewpoint with motivation if required. This carries 2 marks in the exam, and which gives our total for the essay 40 marks. So the essay carries a total of 40 marks there. Right, let's continue with our essay. Right, when you are answering the main part of the essay, you should write headings, subheadings, and provide examples for a maximum of 8 marks there. Right, this is how we mark, right, the essay in the exam. Right, in the main body carries 26 marks. Right, this 18 marks, these are the points that support the question, whatever the question is there. And then a maximum of 8. This one, the 8 is for, like I said, headings and also examples that you might give there. So remember, as you are writing your essay in the exam, please show your headings. I would advise that you boys and girls underline your headings and also show your examples. The word e.g. should not be foreign to you. Say, for example, this. Let's say you are discussing markets in the exam. Give examples of your discussion there. It carries a maximum of 8. If a learner is to explain without headings and appropriate examples, the essay is going to be marked at a maximum of 18 marks. Do not lose the 8 marks in the exam, boys and girls there. Right? Explanations and discussions should be written in point or bullet form in full sentences. I've already said this to you guys. You need to make sure that your explanations are in point form, but the point form should be in full sentences. It sounds contradictory, but what I'm saying is do not write your essays like you write essays in your languages. Right? If you write a point and where you end, put a full stop there, go to the next line, and begin another discussion. This makes it easy for the markers to be able to identify your points so that you do not lose any marks there because they are not able to find your explanations. Graphs and illustrations should have an appropriate heading and be labeled and plotted correctly. If you just draw a graph or you have an illustration and it does not have a heading, you do not earn marks for any graphs and any explanations that do not have, or illustrations that do not have an appropriate heading there. Right. When we move on to the additional part of the essay, it should be of a higher order, cognitive level. Like, for example, the kind of questions you can expect here are questions like how can, why does, evaluate, analyze, how successful is, propose or suggest, etc., etc. Right. Typically, For evaluate kind of question, boys and girls, I would suggest that you write arguments for and also arguments against, then be able to draw an appropriate conclusion. I normally say to the learners, there is no right or wrong answer there. As long as you are able to support your argument with facts that are given, you will earn full marks there. So please remember, you can even write in the exam arguments for, and you also write arguments against, right? Or you say successes, then you say failures. Then you state your arguments for and your arguments against. You will earn full marks there. So please remember again to draw your own conclusion there, right? So that you earn your full marks. You should indicate the following when responding to an essay. Show that this is the introduction. Show that this is the main body. Show that this is the additional part. And also show that this is the conclusion. Like I'm saying to you, boys and girls, do not be shy in the exam to write introduction, main body, conclusion. So when you get in the exam, write introduction and underline. Then you have your introduction, like I said, it's your definition, etc., etc. Skip a line, write main body, and then you write your main body, like I said, in point form, fully explained with headings and examples. Then you move on, you skip a line, you write additional part, then you write your additional part there, right? You evaluate, you draw your conclusion, underline again, and then you skip a line, then you write your conclusion there. Right, speaking on the conclusion to your essay should be on the main body. So it should be on the main question that was asked in the essay, so you are concluding on the rest of the essay. Right, before I leave, boys and girls, I just want you to remember, in order for you to be able to earn full marks, do not leave blank spaces, especially for multiple choice, for the mix and match in question 1.2, even for your 1.3 that a lot of you guys find difficult. The first term that pops to your mind when you read the question, just jot it down somewhere in the question paper. It's usually the right one. And as you enter for your paper 1, make sure you've got your calculator, you've got your pencil and your ruler, just in case there are any diagrams that you might need to tackle. Remember to know your basic knowledge. What is the current interest rate? What is our VAT rate? Who is our governor? Who is our finance minister? And things like that. Economics is about the daily issues that we face on a daily basis. That's it from me, boys and girls. All the best as you write your paper 1. Over to you, Noni.
Thank you, Tando. Matrix, I hope you enjoyed the lesson and you got as many tips and tricks to tackle your exam. We're wishing you everything of the best, and please send us questions or comments if there's anything we can help you with. Congratulations to all of our winners who will be announced on Facebook after this show. Don't forget to check out our schedule on www.wozamatrix.co.za so you can see when your next subject will be playing. Well then, from me, Looney, Tando and Nicolene, thank you and goodbye.